Hey guys, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam, and today we are celebrating the 2,000 subscribers in this little channel. So very happy that you guys have been supporting all these videos and find the content useful. So thanks for that. For those of you who are regulars and you haven't subscribed yet, do push the subscribe button and give us a hand to prop up the channel and make this content more available to others who may benefit from it. And today I want to talk once again about the topic of narcissism and follow a similar thread of some of the previous videos on narcissism that I've done in the past, in which I try to depart slightly or sometimes dramatically away from the messages being shared in the YouTube sphere about what narcissism is all about, in which the situation tends to be painted along the lines of either the situation being, let's say, evil, right? Completely toxic, to be avoided at all costs, and the rest of it, or being some sort of soul contract, some sort of spiritual, meaningful thing that you ought to I don't know, find a higher purpose for. And I want to try to offer kind of a third alternative, which might borrow a little bit from both camps, and let's see where that takes us. So the inspiration for the video comes from a lecture from Alan Watts, of which there are many on YouTube, and in this one he's talking about Zen, the art of Zen, and how Zen masters are experts at putting their students in double binds, mental situations which cannot be resolved, and therefore expose the untenable situation of the ego as a credible, coherent structure. And once the incoherence of the ego has been exposed, then the student finds themselves in a crisis that begs for resolution. And the resolution is to realize that when you're in a double bind, it's the you that's the problem, and not the apparent bind or the apparent lose-lose situation that you find yourself in. So that's one notion that triggered this idea. And I started thinking along the lines of how narcissists can be similar to an unwelcomed, cruel Zen master that exposes the inconsistencies of your ego and your shadow, and therefore invites you eventually to seek resolution to these inconsistencies in this shadow that you have not yet explored, most likely. There's another thought to build on this idea, and it is a conversation that I was having with my brother-in-law, and he was explaining to me. See, he's a music PhD, and he explained to me that tension and release are a fundamental principle of music. Right? You don't want something that is just mushy and soupy and just goes along. There needs to be a tension and a build-up and then a release, and that's what creates a successful piece. And last but not least, on a similar vein, the book I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj. Pause for a second for the helicopter to go by. And in this book, Nisargadatta Maharaj mentions a similar concept in which he says that you need a crisis for the ego to really dissolve, that you cannot manufacture a crisis. And so, taking these ideas from Alan Watts about how Zen masters put you in binds to help you resolve things, and how tension and release, or crisis and resolution, are a theme in nature. that if we learn to tap into, we can use to our advantage. So narcissists are unpleasant to deal with because they essentially poke at the shadow and the ego relentlessly. They cannot help but do that. Whether their ends are wholesome or not, and whether the way they go about it is acceptable or not, we're going to park for a while, and we're simply going to contend with the notion that when you are interacting with a narcissistic person, the typical things that make an interaction acceptable are going to be completely undermined. Your notions about yourself are going to be constantly under attack. So your very personhood is under attack. And from a psychological perspective, that is seen as toxic, and it probably should be seen as toxic, right? It feels like your sense of self is being undermined and uprooted on a constant basis, and it's just like this very dislikable type of interaction. And at the same time, we have in psychology the notion of repetition compulsion. The fact that when something is unresolved within us, we tend to repeat certain patterns that put us put us in situations in which that unresolvedness is going to be brought to the surface. So my thinking along these lines, and when considering the phenomenon of narcissism and codependence, is that if you feel yourself in your bones to be a codependent, you're going to seek out narcissistic counterparts that bring that unresolvedness to the surface. You're going to seek them out compulsively. It's going to be almost as if the rites of passage that no longer exist in our society and which used to dislodge the ego, because rites of passage, we often think they were meant to make you tough, but they were in fact made to completely dismantle your psychological structures. Since we don't have that, you could almost suggest that our seeking out narcissistic relationships are a kind of manufactured rite of passage that puts us in a situation in which we absolutely have no choice but to confront our codependency. And see, here comes the thing is, in psychology, repetition compulsion, in other words, the compulsive putting yourself in the line of fire, and to compulsively repeat patterns that are painful to you, is seen as an unhealthy thing. But it is almost as if the subconscious is seeking out situations in which things can be brought to the surface. And the real problem is not that we compulsively seek these out. The real problem is that once we are in those situations, we don't have the tools to make the most of them so that the resolution can actually take place. In other words, we keep compulsively repeating either relationship with narcissists or addictions or distractions or things of this kind. And when the pain comes to the surface, we disassociate and we find ways to eke out or to zone out or to distract ourselves and to disengage. And therefore, all these crises that we manufacture for ourselves, which are prime moments and prime instances in which the resolution and the alchemical transformation can take place, they go underutilized. In other words, we go through the hurt and the pain, and there's the crisis, but the catharsis doesn't take place because we don't know how to let go, essentially. We have not prepared our nervous system to sustain the discomfort. We have not prepared our nervous system to learn how to self-regulate. We have not cultivated the mindfulness and the embodiment in order for the alchemical cooking to take place. And it does feel like a cooking. It's like a discomfortable, hot stewing in your own juices type of sensation, which is what needs to take place for your neurology to assimilate what's actually happening so that it doesn't have to happen again, right? So the essential idea that I'm trying to communicate this time around is this notion that as uncomfortable as narcissistic relationships may be, these are crises that we subconsciously manufacture on a constant basis in order to lay bare the underlying shadow structures that we can feel in our bones, that we can feel subconsciously are not resolved and not wholesome. And the psyche is trying to heal itself on a constant basis, so it will seek out, it will manufacture crises of its own in order to create the tension. But if we don't know how to evoke the release, then we go from tension to tension, destroying our own nervous system. Our psyche becomes completely adrenalized. There's no resolution, there's no learning from the process. And that's where I depart both from the idea that these are soul contracts, or that they are completely toxic and useless relationships. I think that the happy medium between those two, or the third alternative, which doesn't commit to either camp, is the notion that the subconscious, through repetition compulsion, manufactures crises because it knows that tension and release, or that crisis and resolution, is the way for growth to take place. And that the real problem is not the crisis or the narcissist or what they do. The real problem is our lack of wisdom of knowing how to utilize a crisis in order to trigger the growth and the resolution and the wholesomeness that we're trying to achieve. I will close with the notion that in Chinese, so I've been told, the word for crisis is the same word for opportunity. And so there you see the Eastern wisdom coming in and noticing that whether a crisis comes your way or whether you subconsciously manufacture it, if there is a difference even between those two, there is an incredible opportunity for you to use the perennial philosophies, use the methods of self-cultivation to take that crisis and propel you into resolution within yourself and reaching ever higher levels of wholesomeness and of harmony. So as usual, I'm very curious to hear about your thoughts on the topic. Thanks again for all the subscriptions. The channel has been going on for quite a while, but the last 6 months have really, things have been really taking off. I've never done any advertising. I've tried not to use, too obvious clickbait, and just try to give some substance. And I love to see a small audience responding to that and also engaging in the comments and so on. So thanks a lot for that. I'll keep making these as usual, and thanks for listening. I'll be back with more. Cheerio.